The gunshot that rang out across the dusty main street of Calico, California, made Teresa Kendrick duck behind a water trough, her heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. It was May of 1882, and the silver mining town sat baking under a merciless sun that turned every surface into something that could brand flesh. She pressed her thin frame against the weathered wood, feeling each of her bones protest the movement. When had she last eaten a proper meal? 3 days ago? 4? The world had started going hazy around the edges lately, like she was living inside a dream she couldn't quite wake from. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it had started. Teresa waited, counting her shallow breaths, before she dared peek over the edge of the trough. 2 men were walking away from the saloon, laughing like they had just shared a fine joke, instead of nearly killing half the street. She recognized neither of them, but that was becoming more common these days. Calico was growing faster than anyone could track, silver bringing in fortune seekers from every corner of the country. She stood slowly, her worn calico dress hanging from her shoulders like a sack. The fabric had once been blue, she thought, though it was hard to remember now. Everything about her old life before Vernon Gallagher seemed like it belonged to someone else entirely. She had been Olivia Green then, a girl of 19, with hopes that reached higher than the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, at 22, she was Olivia Gallagher, and her hopes had been ground into the same dust that coated everything in this God-forsaken town. "Madam, are you all right?" The voice came from behind her, deep and concerned in a way that made her flinch. Kindness had become so foreign that she barely recognized it anymore. Olivia turned slowly, squinting against the afternoon glare. The man standing there was tall, probably 6 feet or more, with shoulders broad enough to block out some of that relentless sun. He wore typical cowboy gear, dust-covered denim pants and a faded red shirt, a bandana tied loosely around his neck. His hat was pushed back enough that she could see his face clearly, and she noticed his eyes first. They were a startling blue, the color of the sky just before dawn, and they were looking at her with something that might have been alarm. "I am fine," she said, but her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Just startled by the shooting." The cowboy did not look convinced. His gaze traveled over her, not in the way men usually looked at women, not with hunger or assessment, but with something closer to distress. "Pardon me for saying so, madam, but you look like you have not had a decent meal in weeks." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks, though whether from shame or anger she could not say. "My affairs are my own, sir." "That they are," he agreed, but he did not move away. Instead, he shifted his weight, like he was settling in for a longer conversation. "Name is Tobias Keller. Most folks call me Toby. I work the Triple Bar Ranch about 10 miles south of town." She knew she should walk away. Vernon would be furious if he found her talking to a strange man in the middle of town. But something about Tobias Keller made her stay rooted to the spot. Maybe it was those concerned eyes, or maybe it was simply that she was too tired and too hungry to maintain the energy it took to be afraid anymore. "Olivia Gallagher," she said finally. Recognition flickered across his face. "You are Vernon Gallagher's wife?" The way he said Vernon's name told her everything she needed to know. Everyone in Calico and the surrounding territory knew Vernon Gallagher. He owned the Lucky Strike, one of the most productive silver mines in the region. He was rich, respected by some, feared by others, and utterly merciless when it came to protecting what he considered his. "I am," Olivia said, lifting her chin with what little pride she had left. Tobias studied her for a long moment, and she could see him working through something in his mind. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, like he was approaching a spooked horse. "Mrs. Gallagher, I do not mean to overstep, but are you in some kind of trouble? You look like you are half-starved." The words hung between them in the hot air. Olivia felt something crack inside her chest, some wall she had been maintaining through sheer stubbornness. Maybe it was the heat, or the hunger, or the simple fact that someone had finally noticed. Whatever the reason, she found herself speaking before she could stop herself. "He gives me nothing to survive on." The confession fell from her lips like stones, heavy and irrevocable. She immediately wished she could take it back, but Tobias Keller had already heard. His expression shifted from concern to something darker, something that looked like anger held tightly in check. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. Olivia glanced around the street, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. "I should not have said anything, Please forget I spoke." "I cannot do that, madam." Tobias took a step closer, his voice low and urgent. "If your husband is not providing for you, that is not right. A man has a duty to his wife." "Vernon has many duties," Olivia heard herself say. "I am simply not high among them." She swayed slightly, the world tilting in a way that had nothing to do with the heat. Her last meal had been a crust of bread she had found in the kitchen, and that had been yesterday morning, or maybe the morning before. Time was getting slippery. Tobias caught her elbow before she could fall. "When did you last eat?" "I do not remember," she admitted. The truth felt easier now that she had started telling it. "Vernon keeps the pantry locked. He says I am too extravagant, that I waste his money on foolishness. He gives me no allowance, no access to the household accounts. The servants answer to him, not to me. If I am hungry, well, that is my own fault for not being a better wife." She could hear how desperate she sounded, how pathetic, but she could not seem to stop talking. The words were pouring out of her like water from a breached dam, 3 years of silence breaking all at once. Tobias's jaw tightened. "Where is your husband now?" "At the mine. He is always at the mine." Olivia pulled her arm gently from his grip, though part of her wanted to hold on. "He will not be home until late tonight, if he comes home at all. Sometimes he sleeps in his office in town." "Come with me," Tobias said suddenly. Olivia blinked at him. "What?" "There is a restaurant 2 streets over, the Golden Nugget. I am going to buy you a meal." "I cannot," she said automatically. "Vernon would not approve of me dining with another man." "Vernon does not sound like he would approve of much," Tobias said, and there was an edge to his voice now. "But if he is not here to feed you himself, then someone needs to. You look like you are about to collapse right here in the street." He was right, she realized. Her vision was going spotty at the edges, and her knees felt like they were made of something less solid than bone. Still, she hesitated. She barely knew this man. He could be dangerous. He could be worse than Vernon. But when she looked into those blue eyes, she did not see danger. She saw genuine concern, and something else, something that looked almost like fury on her behalf. When was the last time anyone had been angry for her, rather than at her? "All right," she whispered, "but just a small meal, something quick." Tobias offered her his arm like she was a lady being escorted to a ball rather than a half-starved woman in a threadbare dress. Olivia took it, grateful for the support, and let him guide her down the dusty street. The Golden Nugget was nothing fancy, just a simple establishment with wooden tables and mismatched chairs, but to Olivia it looked like a palace. The smell of cooking food hit her the moment they walked through the door, and her stomach cramped so violently she gasped. "Easy," Tobias murmured. "You need to eat slowly, or you will just be sick." He led her to a corner table, away from the windows and the curious eyes of other diners. When the server came over, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and flour on her apron, Tobias ordered without consulting the menu. "Bring us some broth first, beef if you have it, then bread, fresh if possible, with butter. After that, maybe some chicken and potatoes, but not too heavy, and water, lots of water." The woman looked between them, her expression knowing in a way that made Olivia want to hide, but she simply nodded and disappeared into the back. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly. Tobias removed his hat and set it on the chair beside him. In the dimmer light of the restaurant, she could see him more clearly. He was younger than she had first thought, probably around 25, with dark hair that needed cutting, and sun-weathered skin that spoke of long days outdoors. There was a scar on his left cheekbone, thin and pale, and his hands resting on the table were calloused from hard work. "How long has it been like this?" he asked. Olivia considered lying, but what was the point? This stranger had already seen her at her lowest. "About a year, maybe longer. It happened gradually, so it is hard to say exactly when it became this bad." "And before that?" "Before that, Vernon was different. Or maybe I just did not see him clearly." She looked down at her own hands, noting how thin they had become, how prominent the bones. "We married 3 years ago. I was 19 and he was 28. My father had just died, leaving debts I could not possibly pay. Vernon offered to settle them in exchange for my hand. It seemed like a reasonable arrangement at the time." "Marriages should be more than reasonable arrangements," Tobias said softly. "Perhaps for some people." Olivia met his eyes. "But I was practical. Vernon was wealthy, established, respected. I thought he would at least be fair. But he is not. No. The single word held years of disappointment. He is not. The server returned with the broth, and the smell of it made Olivia's head spin. Tobias pushed the bowl toward her. Small sips, he reminded her. Your stomach needs to remember what food is. She followed his instructions, lifting the spoon with shaking hands. The first taste of the broth was almost overwhelming, rich and salty and warm. She wanted to gulp it down, to drain the entire bowl in seconds, but she forced herself to go slowly. Tobias watched her with an expression she could not quite read, something between sadness and determination. "Why are you helping me?" she asked between sips. "You do not know me. For all you know, I am lying about everything." "You are not lying," Tobias said with certainty. "I can see it in your eyes, in the way you hold yourself. And even if you were, what would it matter? A hungry person deserves to eat, regardless of their reasons." The simple kindness of it made Olivia's throat tighten. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this stranger who was being so inexplicably decent. They sat in silence while she finished the broth. True to his word, Tobias had ordered conservatively, and by the time she had eaten the bread and half the chicken, she was feeling more solid than she had in weeks. Her head cleared, the spots in her vision disappeared, and she could think without feeling like she was wading through thick mud. "Better?" Tobias asked. "Much better, thank you." She set down her fork, suddenly aware of how strange this situation was. "I do not understand why you are doing this. Does there need to be a reason beyond basic decency? In my experience, yes. People do not help without wanting something in return." Tobias leaned back in his chair, considering her words. "Maybe that has been your experience, but it does not have to be the rule. I helped because I saw someone in trouble, someone who needed help. It is as simple as that." But Olivia could see it was not that simple, not for him. There was something in his eyes, a depth of feeling that went beyond casual charity. He was looking at her like she mattered, like her well-being was somehow important to him, and that made no sense at all. They had only just met. "Tell me about the ranch," she said, changing the subject before she could think too hard about the way he was looking at her. "The triple bar, you said?" "That is right." Tobias seemed to accept the shift in conversation easily enough. "It is a cattle operation, owned by a man named Samuel Winston. I have been working there for about 3 years now, ever since I came out from Missouri. It is good work, honest work. The pay is fair, and the accommodations are decent. Sam treats his men right." "Is that uncommon?" Olivia asked. "More uncommon than it should be." He smiled, and the expression transformed his face, making him look younger and more open. "But Sam is a good man. He believes in taking care of the people who work for him. Says a ranch is only as strong as its weakest hand, so he makes sure none of us are weak. He sounds like a wise man. He is. Taught me most of what I know about cattle, about this land." Tobias paused, then added carefully, "He is also always looking for good people. If you ever needed a place to go, somewhere safe, I know he would help." The implication hung between them. Olivia felt a flutter of something that might have been hope, but she crushed it quickly. "I cannot just leave my husband." "Why not?" "Because I am married to him. The law would be on his side, not mine. He could have me dragged back, could charge you with aiding and desertion, could make everything infinitely worse." She shook her head. "No, I have made my bed. I must lie in it. Even if that bed is slowly killing you?" The bluntness of the question made Olivia flinch. "I will manage. I always do." "Managing is not living," Tobias said quietly. "And what you described, being denied food in your own home, that is not a marriage. That is imprisonment." He was right, of course. Olivia had known it for months, maybe longer, but hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way it had not been before. She felt tears prick her eyes again and looked away, embarrassed by her own weakness. "I apologize," Tobias said quickly. "I have said too much. It is not my place to judge your situation." "No, you are right." Olivia forced herself to meet his gaze. "You are absolutely right, but being right does not change the reality of my circumstances. I have no money of my own, no family to take me in, no means of supporting myself. Where would I go? What would I do?" "You could come to the triple bar," Tobias said, and there was an intensity in his voice that made her heart skip. Sam would give you work. We need a cook, someone to help with the household management. The pay would not be much, but it would be yours, and you would have a roof over your head and food in your belly. It was tempting, dangerously so. For a moment, Olivia let herself imagine it, a life where she could eat when she was hungry, where she did not have to walk on eggshells constantly, where she could exist without fear. It sounded like paradise, but reality was harsher than dreams. Vernon would come after me. He would not let me go that easily. Then, we would deal with Vernon, Tobias said, and there was steel in his voice now. You do not understand what kind of man he is. He has influence, connections. He could ruin you just for helping me. Some things are worth being ruined for. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Olivia was not sure she was ready to examine. She looked at this cowboy, this stranger who had materialized out of nowhere with his blue eyes and his unexpected kindness, and felt something shift inside her chest. It was too soon, too fast, too dangerous. But it was there nonetheless, a small spark of something she had thought long dead. I need to go home, she said abruptly, standing up. The movement made her dizzy again, but not from hunger this time, from fear, from hope, from the terrible uncertainty of not knowing what came next. Tobias stood as well, reaching out to steady her. Let me walk you back. No. If Vernon comes home early and sees me with you, he will be furious. The consequences would be worse than any hunger. Then when can I see you again? The question came out urgent, almost desperate. I cannot just walk away now, knowing what I know. Olivia hesitated. Every practical bone in her body told her to cut this off now, to walk away and never speak to Tobias Keller again. But that small spark in her chest was growing warmer, and she found she did not want to extinguish it just yet. Tuesdays, she said finally. Vernon meets with his investors every Tuesday afternoon. He is usually gone from noon until evening. If you happen to be in town then, near the Mercantile on 2nd Street, I might be there as well. It was not quite a promise, but it was as close as she dared come. Tobias seemed to understand. He nodded, his expression serious. Tuesday, then. This coming Tuesday. Perhaps. Olivia knew she should not commit even that much, but she could not seem to help herself. Thank you again for the meal, for your kindness. It was my privilege, Mrs. Gallagher. She walked away before she could do something foolish like cry or, worse, ask him to kiss her. The return journey to the house Vernon kept in town felt both too long and too short. With every step, she felt the weight of reality settling back onto her shoulders, but underneath it, that small spark continued to glow. The house was empty when she arrived, as she had known it would be. It was a grand place by Calico standards, 2 stories with real glass in the windows and painted trim, but to Olivia, it had always felt more like a mausoleum than a home. She slipped inside, half expecting Vernon to materialize and demand to know where she had been, but the silence remained undisturbed. She made her way upstairs to the bedroom she sometimes shared with her husband, though more often she slept alone. Vernon's passion, if it had ever existed, had cooled within months of their wedding. Now he came to her perhaps once a month, fulfilling what he clearly saw as a duty rather than a pleasure. Olivia did not mind the neglect in that regard. His touch had always been perfunctory at best, rough at worst. She stood before the mirror, studying her reflection. Tobias had been right. She looked half-starved. Her collarbones jutted out sharply, her cheeks were hollow, and her eyes seemed too large for her face. How had it gotten this bad without her really noticing? She had been focused so much on just surviving day to day that she had not seen the larger picture of her own decline. The thought of Tuesday, of seeing Tobias again, made that spark glow brighter. It was dangerous, she knew. Every instinct honed by 3 years of marriage to Vernon told her to stay away, to protect herself by maintaining distance. But another part of her, a part she had thought crushed long ago, whispered that perhaps danger was worth it if it meant feeling alive again. Vernon did not come home that night. Olivia slept alone, her stomach comfortably full for the first time in recent memory, and dreamed of blue eyes and broad shoulders and a kindness she had almost forgotten existed. The days until Tuesday crawled by with excruciating slowness. Vernon returned home on Wednesday morning, clearly having spent the night wherever he went when he was not at the house. He barely acknowledged Olivia, simply informed her he would be dining with business associates that evening, and expected her to remain out of sight. She had nodded, relieved to not have to endure one of the stilted meals they occasionally shared. By Tuesday morning, Olivia was a bundle of nerves. She told herself she might not go, that seeing Tobias again would only complicate an already impossible situation. But when noon approached, she found herself changing into her least worn dress, pinning up her hair with care, and slipping out of the house. The mercantile on 2nd Street was busy, as it usually was. Olivia pretended to browse the shelves, her eyes constantly darting to the door. Maybe Tobias would not come. Maybe he had thought better of it, had realized that involving himself in her troubles was foolish. But then the door opened, and there he was, tall and solid and real. His face lit up when he saw her, a smile spreading across his features that made her heart do strange things in her chest. "Mrs. Gallagher," he said, tipping his hat. "Mr. Keller." She was proud that her voice remained steady. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and Olivia was aware of the other customers in the store, of curious glances being cast their way. "Perhaps we could walk," she suggested quietly. Tobias offered his arm, and she took it, letting him guide her out into the bright afternoon. They walked in silence at first, heading toward the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to scrub brush and desert. "How have you been?" Tobias asked finally. "Better than last week," Olivia admitted. "The meal you bought me helped. I was able to think more clearly, to move more easily. I have been rationing what little I can access, trying to make it last." His jaw tightened. "You should not have to ration anything. You should be able to eat when you are hungry. Should be and are two different things." They walked further until they reached a small outcropping of rocks that provided some shade. Tobias gestured to a flat stone, and Olivia sat, grateful to be off her feet. He settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the afternoon heat. "I have been thinking about you all week," he said quietly, "about your situation, about how to help." "There is no helping it, not really." Olivia looked out at the desert landscape, at the mountains in the distance. "This is simply the life I have. It does not have to be." Tobias turned to face her fully. "I spoke with Sam, the ranch owner. I explained the situation, not using your name, but describing the circumstances. He said if you needed a place, the offer stands. Cooking, managing the household, whatever you felt comfortable doing, room and board, plus $15 a month." $15. It sounded like a fortune. It sounded like freedom. It also sounded like an impossible dream. "Vernon would never allow it," Olivia said. "Even if I could find the courage to leave, which I do not think I could, he would come after me. His pride would demand it." "What if you had legal grounds?" Tobias asked. "What if you could prove he was not fulfilling his duties as a husband? Surely there are laws about providing for one's spouse." "Perhaps in theory. But Vernon has money, and money speaks louder than laws, especially out here." She turned to look at him, studying the earnest concern in his face. "Why does this matter so much to you? You do not know me. I am a stranger you met on the street." Tobias was quiet for a long moment, and Olivia could see him wrestling with something. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and careful. "I do not have a good answer for that. All I know is that when I saw you last week, looking like you were about to collapse, something in me said I could not just walk away. And the more I have thought about you, about your situation, the more certain I have become that I need to help. Maybe it is foolishness, or maybe it is something else entirely. I just know I cannot stand by and do nothing." There was something in his eyes, something that made Olivia's breath catch. It looked almost like affection, but that was impossible. They barely knew each other. And yet, she could not deny that she had been thinking of him too, that his face had haunted her dreams, that the memory of his kindness had been the only bright spot in an otherwise gray week. "You barely know me," she whispered. "Then let me get to know you." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused, and she felt the contact all the way up her arm. "Tell me about yourself. Tell me who you were before Vernon Gallagher." So she did. Sitting there in the shade of the rocks, with her hand clasped in his, Olivia told Tobias about her childhood in San Francisco, about her father, who had been a merchant with dreams bigger than his means. She told him about her mother, who had died when she was 12, about how she had kept house for her father for 7 years, learning to manage accounts and negotiate with suppliers. She told him about the debts that had piled up after her father's death, about how overwhelmed she had felt at 19, trying to sort through the mess he had left behind. Vernon seemed like a solution, she said. He was confident, successful. He promised he would take care of everything, and he did. He paid off every debt, gave me a comfortable home, a respected name. I thought I could build a life on that foundation. But you could not, Tobias said softly. No, because Vernon did not want a wife, not really. He wanted an ornament, something pretty to display when it suited him and lock away when it did not. And when I failed to be sufficiently ornamental, when I asked questions about finances or tried to manage the household, he decided I needed to be taught humility. Her voice hardened. The locked pantry, the restricted access to money, it is all about control, about making sure I understand my place. Which is where, according to him. Silent, grateful, and completely dependent. She looked down at their joined hands. I think he enjoys it, knowing I have to ask him for everything, knowing I have nowhere else to go. You do have somewhere else to go, Tobias said firmly. The Triple Bar. You could come tomorrow if you wanted, today even. And Vernon would have to accept it. You are not his possession, Olivia. You are a person with rights and dignity. Hearing him use her first name sent a thrill through her. It was improper, too familiar, but she did not want to correct him. She liked the way it sounded in his voice, warm and respectful and real. It is not that simple, she said, but her protest sounded weak even to her own ears. Maybe not, but maybe it does not have to be as complicated as you think either. Tobias squeezed her hand gently. At least consider it, please, because the thought of you going back to that house, to that man who treats you like you are less than nothing, it tears at me in ways I cannot fully explain. Olivia met his eyes and saw the truth there. He meant every word. This cowboy she had known for only a week cared more about her well-being than her own husband had in 3 years of marriage. The realization was both beautiful and heartbreaking. I will consider it, she heard herself say. But I need time. I need to think about how to do this in a way that does not put you or your employer at risk. I am not worried about risk. Then you should be. Vernon is not a forgiving man. They sat together in the shade until the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. They talked about everything and nothing, about Tobias's childhood in Missouri, about the journey west that had nearly killed him, about his love for the wide open spaces and the simple satisfaction of hard work. He told her about Sam Winston and the Triple Bar, about the other ranch hands who had become like brothers, about the cattle and the horses and the rhythm of ranch life. In turn, Olivia found herself speaking of dreams she had long since buried. She talked about how she had once wanted to run her own business, maybe a dress shop or a bakery. She told him about her love of books, of how she had read everything she could get her hands on as a girl. She confessed that she sometimes stood at the window of Vernon's house and imagined just walking away, just disappearing into the desert and starting over somewhere no one knew her name. You could do that, Tobias said. You could start over, maybe not by disappearing into the desert, but by coming to the ranch. You could build a new life there. With what money, what prospects? I have skills, yes, but no references, no way to prove my worth. I would vouch for you. Sam would too, if I asked him. You would stake your reputation on a woman you have known for a week. Yes, Tobias said simply. I would. The certainty in his voice made Olivia's eyes sting with tears. She blinked them back, unwilling to cry in front of him again. But something inside her was shifting, some fundamental understanding of what was possible. Maybe Tobias was right. Maybe she did not have to accept the life Vernon had crafted for her. Maybe she could choose something different. I need to get back, she said reluctantly. Vernon will be home for dinner tonight, and if I am not there, there will be questions. Tobias helped her to her feet, and they walked back toward town slowly, neither wanting the afternoon to end. When they reached the edge of the mercantile district, Olivia reluctantly pulled her hand from his. Next Tuesday? Tobias asked. Next Tuesday, she confirmed, if I can manage it. And you will think about what I said? About the ranch? I will think about it, I promise. He looked like he wanted to say more, maybe even wanted to kiss her, but they were too exposed here, too visible. Instead, he simply tipped his hat. Until next week then, Olivia. Until next week, Tobias. She watched him walk away, tall and strong in the fading light, and felt that spark in her chest flare into something brighter. something that might almost be called hope. The following week established a pattern. Every Tuesday, Olivia met Tobias near the mercantile, and they walked to their spot by the rocks. Every Tuesday they talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams, and the comfortable silence of two people who were learning to understand each other. And every Tuesday Tobias renewed his offer of sanctuary at the Triple Bar. By the fourth Tuesday, Olivia found herself seriously considering it. Vernon had grown even more distant, sometimes not coming home for days at a time. She knew there were rumors of another woman, though she could not bring herself to care much about that. What bothered her more was the way he looked at her when he was home, like she was something distasteful he had found on the bottom of his shoe. "He knows something is different," she told Tobias, as they sat in their usual spot. It was early June now, and the heat had intensified to the point where even the shade provided minimal relief. "He has not said anything directly, but I can feel his suspicion." "Then that is all the more reason to leave," Tobias said, "before something worse happens." Olivia knew he was right. She could feel the situation at home deteriorating, could sense Vernon's anger building like a storm on the horizon. It was only a matter of time before it broke. "How would we even do it?" she asked. "I cannot just walk out the door with my belongings. Vernon would see, or the servants would tell him." "You do not need belongings, just yourself." Tobias leaned forward, his expression intense. "I could have a horse waiting at the north edge of town this Friday. You could slip out early, before dawn. By the time Vernon realizes you are gone, you would be at the Triple Bar, and Sam could help protect you." "Protect me how?" "Vernon has the law on his side. I am his legal wife. The law also says a man must provide for his wife. If witnesses could testify that he was not, that you were being starved and neglected, a judge might grant you a separation, maybe even a divorce." Divorce. The word hung between them, scandalous and tempting. Olivia had never seriously considered it before. Divorce meant ruin, meant being cast out from polite society forever. But, then again, what did she have to lose? She was already miserable, already half dead from neglect. What was social standing compared to survival? "I am frightened," she admitted. "I know. But you are also brave, braver than you give yourself credit for." Tobias reached out and took both her hands in his. "I will not let anything happen to you, Olivia. I swear it. You cannot promise that. Maybe not, but I can promise I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. And I can promise that, at the Triple Bar, you will have food and shelter and people who care whether you live or die. That has to be better than what you have now." He was right. Olivia knew he was right. And more than that, she was tired. Tired of being hungry, tired of being afraid, tired of existing in a marriage that was really just a slow form of death. She looked into Tobias's blue eyes and saw genuine care there, maybe even something deeper. Whatever was growing between them, it was real and warm and utterly unlike anything she had known with Vernon. "Friday morning," she said quietly, "before dawn." "Where exactly?" The relief that washed over Tobias's face was palpable. "The north edge of town, past the last house on Copper Street. There is a big Joshua tree there. I will be waiting with a horse. Wear practical clothing if you can, something suitable for riding." "I do not have anything practical. Vernon only allows me dresses." "Then wear whatever you have, and we will figure out the rest later." He squeezed her hands gently. "This is the right choice, Olivia. I know it is frightening, but it is right." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The magnitude of what she was agreeing to was beginning to sink in. She was going to leave her husband, run away with a man she had known for barely a month, and throw herself on the mercy of strangers. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was also the only path forward that did not end with her starving to death in Vernon's cold, empty house. They talked for a while longer, working out the details. Tobias would bring supplies, enough food and water for the journey to the ranch. He would bring a gentle horse, one suitable for someone who had not ridden much. He would have clothes waiting at the ranch, practical things borrowed from Sam's daughter who lived in town. Everything would be ready. When it was time to part, Tobias pulled her into an embrace. It was brief and careful, but it was the first time a man had held her with genuine tenderness in longer than she could remember. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes as she pulled away. "Friday," she whispered. "Friday," he confirmed. "I will be there. No matter what happens, I will be there." The days until Friday were the longest of Olivia's life. Every moment stretched thin with tension, with the constant fear that Vernon would somehow discover her plans. But he remained oblivious, wrapped up in his own concerns. On Thursday evening, he informed her he would be leaving for Sacramento on Friday afternoon to meet with potential investors. He would be gone for at least a week. The irony was almost laughable. She had been prepared to flee while he was in residence, to risk his immediate wrath. Now she would have a head start of several hours, maybe more. By the time Vernon realized she was gone, she could be settled at the Triple Bar, surrounded by people who would protect her. That night, Olivia barely slept. She lay in bed listening to the sounds of the house, counting the hours until dawn. She thought about everything she was leaving behind, which was remarkably little. Some dresses she did not care about, jewelry Vernon had given her that held no sentimental value, a life that had never truly been hers. Against that, she weighed the unknown future and found she was not nearly as afraid as she should be. When the first light of dawn began to color the eastern sky, Olivia rose and dressed in her simplest gown. She pinned her hair back tightly, tucked a few small items into her pockets, and took one last look around the bedroom. Then, without allowing herself time for second thoughts, she slipped down the stairs and out the front door. The walk to the north edge of town felt surreal, like she was moving through a dream. The streets were empty this early, just a few dogs and the occasional miner heading to an early shift. No one paid her any attention. She was just another woman going about her business, not someone fleeing her life. The Joshua tree was exactly where Tobias had described, its twisted branches stark against the brightening sky. And beneath it, as promised, was Tobias himself, holding the reins of 2 horses. When he saw her, his entire face lit up. "You came. I said I would." "I know, but I was half afraid you would change your mind." He handed her the reins of the smaller horse, a pretty bay mare with gentle eyes. "This is Rosie. She is sweet and calm, perfect for someone who is not used to riding." Olivia approached the mare slowly, letting the animal sniff her hand. "Hello, Rosie." Tobias helped her mount, his hands careful and respectful, as he guided her foot into the stirrup and steadied her as she swung into the saddle. It felt strange to be sitting astride, her skirts hiked up in a most unladylike fashion, but Olivia found she did not care. Propriety seemed like a small concern compared to freedom. "Ready?" Tobias asked, mounting his own horse with practiced ease. Olivia looked back at Calico one last time, at the town where she had been so miserable for so long. Then she turned to face the open desert, the mountains in the distance, the future that waited beyond the horizon. "Ready," she said. They rode south, away from Calico and everything it represented. The morning air was cool, a brief respite before the day's heat set in. Tobias set an easy pace, frequently checking to make sure Olivia was managing all right. She was sore within the first hour, her body unaccustomed to riding, but she gritted her teeth and said nothing. This discomfort was temporary. What she was riding toward was permanent. They stopped briefly at mid-morning to water the horses and rest. Tobias produced bread and cheese from his saddlebag, and they ate in the shade of a large rock formation. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "My legs hurt, and I think I will have bruises tomorrow, but otherwise I am fine." Olivia took a sip from the canteen he offered. "How much further?" "Another few hours. We should arrive around midday." He studied her face. "Are you having regrets?" "No," she said, and was surprised to find it was true. "I feel strange, almost like I am outside my own body watching this happen. But I do not regret it. For the first time in years, I feel like I am moving towards something rather than just enduring." "Good." Tobias smiled at her, and Olivia felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the rising temperature. "Sam is going to like you, I think. He appreciates people with courage. I do not feel very courageous. Mostly I feel terrified and somewhat nauseated. That is what courage is, being terrified and doing it anyway." They remounted and continued south. The landscape gradually shifted from desert scrub to something slightly greener. Olivia could see cattle in the distance, grazing on tough grass, and realized they must be nearing ranch land. "That is Triple Bar territory," Tobias confirmed, following her gaze. "We run about 3,000 head, spread out across 40 square miles. It is good land, considering. Water is scarce, but Sam has been smart about wells and irrigation." As they rode closer, Olivia could make out buildings in the distance. The main ranch house was substantial, a sprawling structure made of wood and adobe. Around it were several smaller buildings, what looked like bunkhouses and barns and storage sheds. The whole complex had an air of prosperity and good management. They were spotted while still a quarter-mile out. Olivia saw a man emerge from one of the barns and wave. Tobias waved back, then turned to her. "That is Sam. He knows you're coming. I sent word earlier this week." Olivia's nervousness ratcheted up several notches. Meeting Tobias alone had been one thing. Meeting the man who might be her employer, her protector, her hope for a new life, was something else entirely. They rode into the yard and dismounted. Sam Winston came forward, and Olivia got her first good look at him. He was probably in his mid-50s, with graying hair and a weathered face that spoke of decades in the sun. But his eyes were kind, and his smile was welcoming. "You must be Mrs. Gallagher," he said, offering his hand. "Please, call me Olivia." She shook his hand, noting his firm but not crushing grip. "Olivia, then. Welcome to the Triple Bar. Tobias has told me about your situation, and I want you to know you are safe here. Whatever you need, we will do our best to provide." The simple kindness of the statement made Olivia's eyes sting. "Thank you, Mr. Winston. I cannot express how grateful I am for this opportunity." "Just Sam, please. We do not stand on formality here." He gestured toward the main house. "Let me show you around, get you settled. Tobias, can you take care of the horses?" "Of course." Tobias caught Olivia's eye and gave her an encouraging nod before leading both horses toward the barn. Sam took Olivia into the main house. The interior was comfortably furnished, clean and well-maintained without being fancy. "I built this place 20 years ago," Sam explained as he showed her around. "My wife died 5 years back, which is why things have gotten a bit chaotic on the domestic front. We have a girl who comes from town a few times a week to clean, but the cooking and day-to-day management has mostly fallen to me and the hands, and none of us are particularly skilled in that arena." He showed her the large kitchen, the pantry that was reasonably well stocked but disorganized, the living areas that clearly needed a woman's touch. "If you are willing, I would like you to take over the household management. Cooking, cleaning, organizing, whatever you think needs doing. In exchange, you will have your own room, all meals, and $15 a month. Does that seem fair?" "More than fair," Olivia said. "Honestly, I would be grateful for just the room and meals." "Nonsense. Work deserves pay." Sam opened a door off the kitchen, revealing a small but pleasant room with a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the ranch yard. "This would be yours. It is not large, but it is private and secure." Olivia stepped into the room and felt something inside her chest loosen. It was simple, yes, but it was clean and safe, and hers. No one would lock her in or out. No one would deny her food. She could sleep without fear. "It is perfect," she said quietly. Sam smiled. "Good. Now, I know you have been through an ordeal, so please take today to rest and get your bearings. There is no rush to begin work. Tomorrow or even the next day is soon enough." But Olivia shook her head. "If it is all the same to you, I would like to start today. I need to keep busy, to feel useful. Otherwise, I will just sit and worry." "Worry about what?" "About Vernon coming after me. About whether I have made the right choice. About 100 things I cannot control." She met Sam's eyes. "Work is good. Work is solid. I would rather focus on that than on my fears." Sam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I understand. Then how about you take an hour to settle in, change into something more practical if you can, and then come to the kitchen. I will show you where everything is, and you can make whatever you like for supper. The hands eat at 6, and there are 8 of them, including Tobias. They are all good men, respectful, but they eat like they are starving, so make plenty." Olivia felt a smile tug at her lips. "I can do that." Sam left her to settle in, and Olivia sat on the bed testing the mattress. It was firm, but comfortable, certainly better than the one in Vernon's house. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, and allowed herself a moment to simply breathe. She had done it. She had actually left. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. Whatever came next, whatever consequences Vernon chose to pursue, she would face them from a position of relative safety and support. That had to count for something. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, sitting up. It was Tobias, carrying a bundle of clothes. "Sam's daughter sent these over a while back. Figured you might need them." He set the bundle on the dresser, his expression shy. I know they are not fancy, but they are practical. Olivia stood and unfolded the bundle. There were 2 simple cotton dresses, an apron, sturdy boots, and even some undergarments. Everything was plain but serviceable, exactly what she needed. "Thank you," she said. "This is perfect." Tobias lingered by the door, like he was not sure if he should stay or go. "How are you feeling?" Overwhelmed, relieved, frightened, all of it at once. She turned to face him fully. "But mostly grateful to you for seeing me when no one else did, for caring enough to help." "I would do it again in a heartbeat," Tobias said softly. "You deserve so much better than what Vernon gave you." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and Olivia felt that spark between them flare brighter. It would be so easy to cross the small space that separated them, to let him hold her, to see where this undeniable attraction might lead. But it was too soon. She was still technically married, still fleeing from one life into another. She needed time to find her footing before she could think about what might be growing between them. "I should get changed and start on supper," she said, breaking the moment. "Sam said the hands eat at 6. "Right, yes." Tobias cleared his throat. "I will see you then. If you need anything, I am usually in the barn or the south pasture." After he left, Olivia changed into one of the dresses. It was a bit loose, evidence of how much weight she had lost, but it fit well enough. The boots were slightly too large, but with an extra pair of socks they would do. She plaited her hair into a practical braid and tied on the apron. When she looked in the small mirror over the dresser, she almost did not recognize herself. She looked like a rancher's wife, or a cook, or any of a dozen practical women who made their living through honest work. She looked, she realized, free. In the kitchen, Sam showed her where everything was kept. The pantry was indeed well stocked with basics: flour, beans, dried meat, canned goods, root vegetables, and even some spices. Olivia mentally planned a menu and got to work. Cooking for 9 people was a challenge she had not faced in years, but the skills came back quickly. She made biscuits, knowing cowboys always appreciated good bread. She prepared a large pot of beef stew, rich with vegetables and thick gravy. She made a simple apple pie with dried fruit and a lattice crust, the kind of dessert that spoke of home and comfort. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, the kitchen smelled like heaven. The hands began filing in, drawn by the aroma, and Olivia felt a flutter of nerves. These were the men she would be living and working alongside. Their acceptance mattered, but she need not have worried. When they saw the spread she had laid out, every face lit up with appreciation. Sam made introductions while everyone served themselves. There was Henry, the foreman, a gruff man in his 40s with a kind smile. There was Miguel, who was barely 20, and treated her with courtly respect. There were Jack and James, twins who finished each other's sentences. There were 3 more whose names she promptly forgot in the flurry of greetings. And there was Tobias, who looked at her like she had hung the moon. The meal was a success. The hands praised everything, asked for seconds, and cleaned their plates with obvious satisfaction. Olivia found herself relaxing, accepting their compliments with growing confidence. This was something she was good at, something she could contribute. After dinner, she insisted on cleaning up herself, despite offers of help. She needed the quiet work to process everything that had happened. As she washed dishes and put away food, she heard the hands settling in for the evening, their voices a low rumble from the main room where they were playing cards. "They liked you." Olivia turned to find Tobias leaning in the doorway. "I hope so. It would be awkward if they did not, considering I'm going to be cooking for them every day. Trust me, after that meal, you could probably rob them blind and they would forgive you." He came into the kitchen, picking up a dish towel. "Let me help." They worked in companionable silence for a while, Olivia washing and Tobias drying. It felt domestic and intimate in a way that made her heart ache. This was what marriage should be, she thought. Partnership, mutual respect, working together toward common goals. "Are you glad you came?" Tobias asked quietly. "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation. "I am terrified about what comes next, but I do not regret leaving. Vernon will probably come looking for you." "I know. I am trying not to think about it." Tobias set down the dish he was drying and turned to face her. "When he does, you will not be alone. Sam will stand with you. I will stand with you. Every man on this ranch will stand with you. You are one of us now, and we protect our own." The fierceness in his voice made Olivia's eyes sting. Why? Why would you all risk so much for someone you barely know? Because it is the right thing to do, and because— He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Because you matter, Olivia. You matter to Sam, you matter to the hands, and you matter to me. More than you probably should, given how short a time we have known each other. But there it is. Olivia set down the dish she had been washing and dried her hands on her apron. Then, before she could overthink it, she stepped close to Tobias and hugged him. He stiffened in surprise for a moment before his arms came around her, holding her gently but firmly. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "For everything." She felt him press a kiss to the top of her head, so soft she almost thought she imagined it. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, before Olivia reluctantly pulled away. It was too much too soon, but it was also exactly what she needed. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable routine. Olivia woke early, made breakfast for the hands, packed lunches for those working far from the house, cleaned, organized, and prepared dinner. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time in years, she went to bed each night feeling tired in a good way. The kind of tired that came from accomplishment rather than despair. She was gaining weight, her frame filling out as she had regular access to food. Her cheeks regained color, her eyes lost that haunted look, and her movements became more energetic. Sam noticed and commented on it one morning. "You are blooming," he said. Like a plant that was dying from drought finally getting water. It was an apt metaphor. Olivia did feel like she was blooming, coming back to life in ways both physical and emotional. And a large part of that, she had to admit, was because of Tobias. They saw each other daily, of course, but they also made time for each other beyond the routine of ranch life. They took walks in the evening after dinner, talking about everything and nothing. They sat together during the rare moments of downtime, comfortable in each other's silence. And slowly, carefully, they were falling in love. Olivia knew she should resist it. She was still married, still legally bound to Vernon. Starting something with Tobias was courting scandal and complication, but she could not seem to help herself. After years of coldness, his warmth was irresistible. It was Tobias who first broached the subject of their feelings. They were sitting on the porch one evening in late June, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. The air had finally cooled from the day's oppressive heat, and there was a pleasant breeze. "I am falling in love with you," Tobias said abruptly. "I know I probably should not say that, given your situation, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it." Olivia's heart kicked against her ribs. "Tobias, you do not have to say anything back. I just needed you to know." He turned to look at her, and the expression in his blue eyes made her breath catch. "I know you are still married. I know there are 100 reasons why this is complicated, but I also know that what I feel for you is real, and I think what you feel for me might be real too." He was right. Olivia could not deny it any longer, not to him and not to herself. "I am falling in love with you too," she admitted. "I have been fighting it, telling myself it is too soon, that I am rebounding from a bad marriage, that I should not trust my own feelings. But the truth is, I have never felt this way before. Not even in the early days with Vernon, when I was trying to convince myself our arrangement could become something more." Tobias reached out and took her hand. "Then, what do we do about it?" "I do not know. I suppose I need to figure out the legal situation with Vernon, whether I can get a divorce or an annulment or whatever is possible." She looked down at their joined hands. "I do not want to rush into anything, not when I am still figuring out who I am outside of being Vernon's wife. But I also do not want to lose this, whatever is growing between us." "You will not lose it?" Tobias said firmly. "I am not going anywhere. We can take this as slowly as you need. I just wanted you to know how I felt." They sat together as the stars came out, hands intertwined, each lost in thought about what the future might hold. Olivia felt more at peace than she had in years. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with Tobias at her side. But peace, as it turned out, was a temporary condition. A week later, Vernon Gallagher arrived at the Triple Bar Ranch. Olivia was in the kitchen preparing lunch when she heard the commotion outside. Raised voices, the sound of a horse being ridden hard, Sam's voice saying something sharp and authoritative. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the door, dread pooling in her stomach. Vernon sat astride a fine black horse in the ranch yard, looking every inch the wealthy mine owner, but his face was mottled with rage, and when he saw Olivia, his expression turned murderous. "There she is!" he shouted. "My thieving, faithless wife!" Sam stood between Vernon and the house, his arms crossed. Behind him, several of the hands had appeared, including Tobias, all looking ready to intervene if necessary. "Mr. Gallagher, I am going to have to ask you to leave," Sam said calmly. "You are not welcome here." "Not welcome? That is my wife you are harboring." Vernon dismounted and took a step forward. "She belongs to me, and I have every legal right to take her home." "She does not want to go home," Sam replied. "And given that you were starving her, I would say she has good reason to want to stay away." Vernon's face went even redder. "Starving her? What lies has she been telling you? I gave that ungrateful woman everything, a fine house, fine clothes, a position in society, and this is how she repays me, by running off with some cowboy?" His eyes found Tobias, and his lip curled. "You must be the one who seduced her." "No one seduced anyone," Tobias said, his voice tight with anger. "Olivia left because you were mistreating her. She came here seeking safety, and that is exactly what we have given her." "She is my wife. She has no right to seek safety from anyone but me." "Actually, Mr. Gallagher, the law is a bit more complicated than that." Everyone turned to see a newcomer riding into the yard. He was a middle-aged man in a suit, clearly not a rancher. He dismounted and approached, tipping his hat. "Peter Collins, attorney out of Barstow. Mr. Winston here sent for me last week." Vernon looked between Sam and the lawyer, his expression turning wary. "What is this?" "This is me making sure everything is done properly and legally," Sam said. "Mr. Collins, would you care to explain the situation to Mr. Gallagher?" The lawyer nodded. "Certainly. Mr. Gallagher, California law does allow for divorce in certain circumstances, including willful neglect and cruelty. Based on the testimony I have taken from your wife, as well as from several witnesses who can attest to her condition when she arrived here, I believe we have grounds for a divorce petition." "Testimony? Witnesses? This is absurd," Vernon sputtered. "I never neglected her." "Then perhaps you can explain why she arrived at this ranch severely underweight, malnourished, and in a state of physical distress," the lawyer said calmly. "Or perhaps you can explain why multiple residents of Calico have sworn statements saying they saw you deny your wife access to money, food, and basic necessities." Vernon's face went from red to pale. "Who gave you those statements?" "That is privileged information, but I assure you they are credible witnesses, and their statements are compelling." Mr. Collins pulled a sheaf of papers from his satchel. "I have prepared divorce papers citing neglect and cruelty. If you sign them, this can be settled quietly and quickly. If you do not, we will take the matter to court, and I assure you, the evidence will be made very public." For a moment, Vernon looked like he might explode. His hands clenched into fists, and Olivia saw him glance toward the house, toward her, with such hatred that she took an involuntary step back. But Tobias moved to stand beside Sam, and the other hands closed ranks as well. Vernon might be rich, but he was outnumbered and outmatched here. "You will regret this," Vernon said, his voice low and venomous. "All of you, especially you." He pointed at Olivia. "I made you something from nothing, and this is how you repay me? You will never survive on your own. You will come crawling back within a month." "I do not think she will," Sam said mildly. "From what I have seen, Olivia is more than capable of surviving and thriving. She just needed to get away from you to do it." Vernon snatched the papers from Mr. Collins and scanned them quickly. Olivia could see the calculations running behind his eyes. He could fight this, drag it out, make it ugly for everyone involved. But that would mean airing his private business in public, admitting that he had failed as a husband. Men like Vernon cared deeply about their reputations. "Fine," he spat finally. "If she wants her freedom so badly, she can have it. But she gets nothing from me. Not a penny, not a possession. Do you hear me, Olivia? You will leave this marriage with exactly what you brought to it. Nothing." "That is acceptable to me," Olivia said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I never wanted your money, Vernon. I just wanted to be treated like a human being." Vernon signed the papers with vicious strokes of the pen Mr. Collins provided. "There, you are free. I hope you find your precious humanity living as a servant on some dirty ranch in the middle of nowhere." He mounted his horse and rode away without another word, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Olivia watched him go and felt an enormous weight lift from her shoulders. She was free, truly, legally free. Sam clapped the lawyer on the shoulder. "Thank you, Peter. Send the bill to me." "Already taken care of," Mr. Collins said with a smile. "Consider it a wedding present." "Wedding present?" Olivia repeated, confused. Sam and Tobias exchanged a glance, and then Tobias was walking toward her, his expression hopeful and nervous all at once. "I know it is soon," he said when he reached her. "I know you probably need time to recover from all this, to find yourself again. But I also know what I feel, and I know what I want." He took her hands in his. "Olivia Green, once this divorce is finalized, would you consider marrying me?" Olivia felt tears spill down her cheeks. Happy tears this time, not the sad ones she had shed so often in recent years. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Tobias pulled her into his arms, and this time when he kissed her, it was real and full of promise. The hands whooped and cheered, Sam grinned like a proud father, and even Mr. Collins looked pleased. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks later, in late August of 1882. The process was surprisingly smooth, largely because Vernon wanted it over with as quickly as possible. Olivia suspected he had found someone else, some other woman, who was more tractable and less likely to cause him trouble. She and Tobias were married on a beautiful September morning, with Sam officiating and all the ranch hands in attendance. Olivia wore a simple white dress that Sam's daughter had loaned her, and Tobias wore his best shirt and a new pair of pants. They exchanged vows under the big oak tree near the main house, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life brought. That night, in the small house Sam had helped them build on a corner of the ranch property, Tobias made love to his wife with a tenderness and passion that made Olivia cry again. This was what intimacy was supposed to be, she realized. Not a cold duty, but a joyful sharing between two people who genuinely cared for each other. "I love you," she whispered as they lay tangled together afterward. "I love you too," Tobias replied, kissing her forehead. "I have from the moment I saw you by that water trough, looking like you were about to fall over. That was not my most dignified moment. It was the most important moment of my life, because it brought you to me." They fell asleep in each other's arms, and Olivia dreamed of wide-open spaces and endless possibilities. Life on the Triple Bar settled into a new rhythm. Olivia split her time between managing the main house kitchen and keeping her own home with Tobias. She found she loved the work, loved feeling useful and valued. Sam increased her wages and often praised her contributions to the ranch's success. Tobias thrived as well. He was promoted to assistant foreman, working closely with Henry to manage the cattle and the other hands. He and Olivia were saving money, planning for the future, talking about maybe buying their own small spread someday. In the spring of 1883, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with a complex mixture of joy and terror. She had never imagined herself as a mother, had never been given the chance to think about it during her marriage to Vernon. But with Tobias, everything was different. "We are going to have a baby," she told him one evening, watching his face carefully. Tobias whooped with delight and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently, worried he might hurt her. "A baby! Olivia, that is wonderful. You are happy?" "Happy? I am beyond happy." He placed his hand on her still flat stomach with wonder. "We are going to be parents." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered from terrible morning sickness in the early months and swelled up uncomfortably in the late stages. But through it all, Tobias was attentive and supportive, bringing her ginger tea for the nausea, rubbing her swollen feet, reading to her in the evenings when she was too tired to do anything but rest. Their son was born in November, a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and a surprisingly full head of dark hair. They named him Samuel, after the man who had given them both a chance at a new life. Sam Winston, for his part, was delighted to have a namesake. He showered little Samuel with attention, carving him toys and telling him stories, even though the baby was too young to understand. The other hands were equally taken with the child, each one vying to be baby Samuel's favorite uncle. As Olivia sat rocking her son one evening, with Tobias beside her whittling a toy horse, she reflected on how much her life had changed in less than 2 years. She had gone from a woman slowly starving in a loveless marriage to a wife, mother, and valued member of a community. She had gone from hopeless to hopeful, from imprisoned to free. "What are you thinking about?" Tobias asked, noticing her expression. "Just how fortunate I am," Olivia said. "If you had not stopped to talk to me that day in Calico, if you had not cared enough to ask questions, I might not be here right now." "But you are here," Tobias said firmly, "and you are never going back. This is your life now, our life, and it is going to be a good one." He was right. The years that followed proved it. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Rose in 1885 and another son named Thomas in 1887. Sam eventually deeded them a section of the ranch, and they built a larger house to accommodate their growing family. Tobias became foreman when Henry retired, and Olivia became known throughout the region for her excellent cooking and her warm hospitality. They heard occasional news of Vernon over the years. He had remarried a woman half his age, but that marriage had also ended badly. His mind had played out, and he had lost much of his wealth in bad investments. Eventually, he left California altogether, moving east to try his luck in other ventures. Olivia felt a twinge of pity when she heard about his misfortunes, but mostly she felt grateful that she had escaped when she did. Sam Winston lived to see all 3 of the Keller children grow up. He passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1895, leaving the triple bar to be divided between Tobias and the other longtime hands. By then, the ranch had become one of the most successful operations in the region, known for its quality cattle and its fair treatment of workers. On a warm evening in June of 1900, Olivia sat on the porch of their home, watching her 3 children play in the yard. Samuel was 16 now, already taller than his father, and showing signs of becoming a fine rancher himself. Rose was 14, beautiful and spirited, with her mother's determination and her father's kindness. Thomas was 12, sweet-natured and always laughing. Tobias came out and sat beside her, taking her hand in his. At 43, he had some gray in his hair and lines around his eyes, but to Olivia, he was as handsome as the day they had met. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. "When I think about where I was 18 years ago, how hopeless everything seemed, and then I look at all this, it feels almost like a dream. Not a dream, just life, the way it should be lived." Tobias kissed her hand. "You took a chance on me, on us, and look what we built." "We built it together," Olivia corrected. "That is what makes it special." As the sun set over the ranch they had built together, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate woman in the dusty streets of Calico to the confident rancher's wife surrounded by family and love, she had traveled a long road, and all of it had started with a simple act of kindness from a cowboy who had seen her suffering and decided to help. She leaned her head on Tobias's shoulder, feeling his arm come around her, solid and warm and real. Their children laughed in the yard, chasing fireflies as darkness fell. From inside the house came the smell of the pie she had baked earlier, cooling on the kitchen counter. And all around them was the land they loved, the ranch they had helped build, the life they had created from nothing but hope and hard work and love. "I love you," she said, the words as true now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "I love you too," Tobias replied, "today, tomorrow, and always." And there, on the porch of their home, under the vast western sky, surrounded by everything they had built and everyone they loved, Olivia Keller knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The girl who had once believed she had nothing to survive on had discovered she had everything that mattered: love, family, purpose, and freedom. And that, she thought with a smile, was worth more than all the silver in California. The years continued to be kind to the Keller family. Samuel grew into a fine young man and eventually married a schoolteacher from Barstow, bringing his bride to live at the Triple Bar. Rose fell in love with the son of a neighboring rancher, and their wedding was the social event of the year, bringing together people from all over the region. Thomas, the youngest, showed an unexpected talent for horses and became known as one of the best horse trainers in California. Tobias and Olivia became grandparents in 1903, when Samuel and his wife welcomed a daughter. More grandchildren followed over the years, filling their lives with noise and chaos and immeasurable joy. The ranch continued to prosper, expanding its holdings and becoming one of the cornerstones of the local economy. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1912, Tobias arranged a party at the ranch. Friends and family came from miles around to celebrate. And as Olivia looked around at the crowd, she was struck by how full her life had become. These were people who loved her, who respected her, who valued her contributions. She was no longer the frightened, starving woman hiding from her husband. She was Olivia Keller, rancher's wife, mother, grandmother, friend. 30 years, Tobias said, as they danced together under the stars. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. So would I, Olivia agreed. Even the hard parts, they led us here, and here is perfect. As they swayed together to the music, surrounded by the life they had built and the people they loved, Olivia knew that her story had ended exactly as it should, with love, with family, and with the absolute certainty that she was cherished and valued and free. The cowboy who had seen her thin frame and asked the truth had given her more than just a meal or a place to stay. He had given her a future, a purpose, and a love that would last the rest of their days. And that, Olivia thought, as she looked up into Tobias's still blue eyes, was the greatest gift anyone could ever receive.